about. So these are folks who've been in the space industry for a long time, so we're going to have a great conversation. So I'll save some time at the end for questions. So we're starting at 11. We're going to try and finish in about half an hour. So at first, I'll go ahead and why don't we start at the end. Michelle, why don't you introduce yourself and just a little bit about your bio, and then we'll move down the list.
Hi, my name is Michelle Lucas, and I've had the privilege. The privilege of being the art of the big mouth. My name is Michelle Lucas, and I've had the privilege of being part of the space industry for almost 3 decades now, and I've worked with almost everyone on this stage at some point in my career. I started off working at Johnson Space Center in mission control. I then was a technical astronaut instructor. I now run a nonprofit called Higher Orbits that uses spaceflight as a way to get students more engaged in STEM and to show them there's a place in space for them. I'm grateful to be back here in Las Cruces for the first time in a handful of years and excited to answer your questions.
Okay. My name is Wendy Lawrence. I'm a former Navy helicopter pilot and NASA astronaut. You'll get a chance to hear a little bit more from me later, so I won't tell you all of my background, but I grew up over in Southern California. I grew up watching Star Trek. I do like Star Wars too. Don't put me on the spot. I like both. Kind of like humans and robots. I like both. But I also had the privilege of growing up during the Apollo program, and that was a very pivotal moment in my life, and that's where the astronaut dream was first born and cultivated.
My name is Janjua. I just spoke, so I'll spare you guys an underneath bio. I'm a test pilot, experimental test pilot here at Virgin Galactic. I fly both the mothership and the spaceship, and I was lucky enough to fly last summer with the most recent flight. I'm an engineer by trade and a military fighter pilot test pilot. I've flown in Canada and the United Kingdom, and most recently at the United States Air Force Test Pilot School and at Edwards Air Force Base. And that's where I kind of learned what I need to learn to be able to help contribute here. I'm real happy to be able to contribute here on that.
And I'm Kerrick. I'm a native of El Paso, Texas. I've always wanted to work in the space industry since I was 5 years old, and I had a 30-year career at NASA at the Johnson Space Center. I was an astronaut instructor, and then served time as a flight director leading space station and shuttle missions. I retired in 2021, and for the last 4 years, I've been working for a private space company called Arius Technology, and I'm excited to be part of this camp.
My name is Scott McLaughlin. I'm the executive director of the Spaceport. I was born in Albuquerque. I'm a native New Mexican. I actually lived in El Paso for a while. Left the state for about 26 years. I'm a New Mexico State graduate in engineering, and then also got involved in business, and I'm now running the Spaceport with a bunch of great people here. So, all right, let's go ahead and get started. We'll just pass the microphone back and forth. So space is a pretty interesting topic. So what are some of the ways that space exploration has made life better on Earth? What are the applications of space that maybe people don't even know about, and what has it done for us?
So I'll start out with just a couple of examples from the International Space Station research. They've done research in osteoporosis. So some of you may be at a point in your life where you need injections or you take pills. You're welcome. Or your GPS, you're welcome. Or the one that I'm really excited about is there's some cancer research that's been going on. You can grow cancer cells at a faster rate and in its more pure form on board the space station, and they are this close to finding some remedies for some of the cancers that have focused.
And so, when you mentioned how she grew up in the Apollo era, and that's sort of the spark for her, and for me it was the space shuttle era. So, thank you to Voyagers like her who kind of lit that fuse in people like our lives. one thing that Space Shuttle did when I was 25 years at Edwards, we had a program that deployed life-saving technology to fighter aircraft and will transition to civilian aircraft called automatic ground collision avoidance. And it relies on something called digital terrain database that was given to us by the shuttle. So the shuttle mapped with very high fidelity the entire Earth. And it was a great way where we are saving lives here on Earth because of what these folks did during their missions. So that's an awesome example.
I'll go ahead and rephrase the question a little bit. Let's talk about the space station. So the space station has been occupied for, I think, almost 25 years continuously. That means humans have been in space continuously for 25 years. So what would you say about that, Wendy?
I'll give you a little background. I've known Janjua for a very long time.
They were 5 when they met. Go with it.
I first met Ginger in Russia. She was supporting the very first NASA astronaut to be assigned to the space station crew, Bill Shepard. We spent time together over in the Russian control center outside of Moscow supporting Bill with the orders. Let me start even before that though. Why was I in Russia? I was there because of a little known program called Shuttle Mirror. That was the warm-up program for the International Space Station. Now let me put this in more perspective before you. I'm still on active duty in the United States Navy. I have been trained to go to war against the Soviet Union. It's the mid-1990s. There's no Soviet Union. It's now Russia. President Clinton has decided to bring them into the International Space Station program. And he says, guess what? Enemies no more. They're partners. Go make that so. I was at the point of getting the sphere to make that so. So that the astronauts and cosmonauts back there in the mid-90s were trying to figure out how to make this work. Let me tell you, we had no idea that 30 years later, we would still be flying on orbit together. And not just partners, but as friends, as crewmates. So I personally think history will look back at the International Space Station program with the people like Ginger and Michelle and say its most significant contribution is it shows that when we humans choose to do so, we really can take those swords and beat them into plowshares and do things together peacefully and have some amazing contributions for life back here on planet Earth.
There's been an argument to have the International Space Station win the Nobel Peace Prize. And I think,
Oh, it's working now. Okay. I think there's a lot of validity to that. I started traveling to Russia, and I remember as a child, Star City didn't exist on a map because it was too secret. And I'm a little girl who grew up very poor on the south side of Chicago, and here I am getting to work with people who I read about in books. And so there's an inspirational factor of showing our students the power of working together. And I'm going to be honest, it has been one of the most transformational things in my life to be part of because, well, I was probably had a pretty diverse growing up background being from Chicago. So to go into another country that is so vastly different in many ways and realize, you know what, they're people just like us. There's so much power in that. And then us being able to come back and share those stories with students really opens their eyes.
I think all of you have worked with students at some level, right? You've all had an opportunity. Michelle, you've done a lot of that, and you told us a little about it. Would you guys like to share a story about getting the lights on in the student's eyes? Maybe, you know, something that was really inspirational to the student?
So I was walking down the hallway at NASA one day, and this young man passed me, and he says, oh my God, it's you. Oh my God, what have I done? And he said, you're the reason because I'd gone to his high school at some point, and he said, you were so excited to talk about your work that it just sparked something in me. And I applied and I applied and I finally got in, and I'm working over in this area. It turns out he was working in the area that I started off in. And so it just brought me to tears.
I have a quick one. It only happened 10 days ago, actually. I went back to my alma mater, and at the end of like the equivalent of complete week, they give out at recruit term, they give out these hat badges, and they welcome the cadet wing. They welcome these new recruits into the cadet wing. And so, in the suit, got the medals, and I asked one of the kids, he's like 17, 18 years old, adult, and I said, hey, what do you want to do? He said, he didn't say I would like or I think. He said, I'm going to be a fighter pilot. So I think, well, great. I said, I was a fighter pilot. And I said, that's what I said. It's great. It's fantastic. He goes, I know. And I said, well, how do you know? He goes, I sent you a message 5 years ago online. And he said, you replied. You told me to go to a recruiting center and like these are the things I could do. And I was like, oh yeah, Sebastian. He goes, yeah, that was me. And he goes, and here I am. So I'm here. And so I was like, great, we're taking a selfie. So I'm able to, but I'm sure these guys have tons of others. But it's exciting.
I have a very similar story going back to my alma mater, the Naval Academy. And I rode crew at the Naval Academy. No, I was not a coxswain. I was in the bow. But they named a crew shell after me. And I was at the dedication ceremony, and a young midshipman came up to me and said, ma'am, I'm sure you don't remember me, but I met you in 8th grade at an event at the Museum of Flight in Seattle. And I told you I wanted to be an astronaut, and you talked to me about what you did, your path going to the Naval Academy, learning how to fly. And I just want to tell you that here I am, studying engineering, and I hope to be able to go into naval aviation after I graduate.
And I won't tell my story, but I'm gonna tag on hers. The part Wendy didn't see, and I don't know that I've ever told you this. Midshipman, she had to keep her cool, right? She's in uniform, all the things, and she's keeping her cool when she's talking to Wendy. What Wendy didn't see, and I had the privilege of seeing, was this young woman going around the corner to her friends where everyone can't see her and squealing with excitement that she's gotten to say hello to Wendy and to share her story. So there's power in the journey. And whether it's a space journey or whatever journey you're on, sharing that with students, it can literally change their world.
So we've had 7, I think, Virgin Galactic flights to space out here, and our story, the Spaceport, is during most of these flights we were able to open up our building over here. You see the funny looking building over there called the Spaceport Operations Center. That's like the mission control for Spaceport America employees. And we opened that up, and we've had lots of students out. And I think the last flight that Virgin Galactic flew, which was your flight, I think we had something like 70 kids out from local high schools and junior highs, and we saw several of them, just watch what was happening, and you could tell that we had just changed their future. So thank you, Virgin Galactic, and we see that all the time when we bring kids out here. So let's move a little bit along. So going into space and space exploration has taken many, many paths. We have the Hubble Space Telescope. We have the James Webb Telescope. How many people have seen those images? So images of galaxies formed just a few 100 million years after the birth of the universe, right? It kind of blows your mind, right? So Wendy's been to space, so I'll start with her, but what does it mean when you go to space? What does it mean when you look down at our little precious planet?
What I find fascinating, you talk to astronauts, cosmonauts who are Russian astronauts, or the taikonauts who are the Chinese astronauts, and we all use the same word to describe the way the Earth looks to us. Typically, you don't get a lot of time to look out the window, so any opportunity you get is really an incredible experience. We live on a beautiful, beautiful planet. And it's really striking in the daylight part of the orbit. The stars are still there, but the sunlight is so powerful, it literally wipes out the lights from the stars. So the way we see Earth is it looks suspended in this incredibly and intensely black, seemingly endless void of space. And it makes the Earth look small to us. And the word we all use in common is it makes the Earth look fragile. So for most of us, that view out the window can be somewhat of a life-changing experience. Certainly for all of us, it's very impactful. It changes the way we view this planet. And what it drives home to us is, right now, this is it. We don't know how to live anywhere else. It's just planet Earth. And all of us together, we are crewmates on planet Earth. And all of us together really need to work hard to take care of this planet. Because again, it's all we have.
How many of you would like to go to space? Oh, wow. That's very That's great. So one thing interesting about the panel is we kind of cover an awful lot about what it takes to go to space. We have a spaceport. I represent the spaceport. Michelle represents kind of the STEM and the workforce development. You can't go to space unless you got kids who are interested in science and engineering and math. But of course, it takes everything else. It takes marketing. It takes finance and accounting. You know, one of the things I read about when I read about Apollo back in those days is everybody was part of the team. It didn't matter if you were sweeping the floors or you were one of the astronauts. You were part of the team of, I think, about 300,000 people who got us to the moon in a very, very short amount of time. So we're very proud about that. But New Mexico decided to build a spaceport in partnership with VG, Virgin Galactic, our first customer. And it represents a new age in space. If you think about space, it started with a bunch of government programs. It started with Apollo, and then it moved on a little bit. We started having commerce. We started using space a lot, like GPS. Everybody, how many of you used your GPS to get out here today? Well, that wouldn't be possible without space, right? Those are global positioning satellites that are flying above us. And now we're in a new era. Everybody knows about SpaceX and Starship. Yeah, how many know how often a launch occurs in Florida right now? Does anybody want to guess? How often? Every 2 or 3 days, and it's increasing, and it's going to increase with a couple other vehicles. So New Mexico built the spaceport. So I guess the question is, now that we're kind of in this new era of space, of commercial space companies like Virgin Galactic taking people to space regularly, but a spaceport like Spaceport America, which is a commercial spaceport. We're not here because NASA is here, because here is an economic development project, believe it or not. So what does that new era of space look like when so many people are going to get to go to space, participate in space, work in space, manufacture in space? So each of you kind of give your idea what this new space era looks like. And we'll start with Michelle.
So I remember when we would get excited that there was one launch every couple weeks. And I was in Florida in June to run one of our student programs. I arrived on a Sunday night coming from Vandenberg Space Force Base, where there was supposed to be a launch that had delayed. Got into Florida, an hour after I landed, I'm racing to the Space Coast. I watch a launch at 1 in the morning. I wake up to watch my second launch of the day at 6:40 in the morning. That afternoon, driving in the car to dinner, I was listening, I was being very careful. On my phone, I have the video playing of a launch in Vandenberg because I had a payload on that. The next day, I see my fourth launch in person in Florida, watching Peggy Whitson, who I had the privilege of training fly to space. And then the next day, I see a fifth. We wouldn't launch that many rockets in months in the past. The fact that it is evolving where we have so much more access to space, it's a game changer. There are no longer a handful of jobs, and not that was ever truly a handful of jobs, but now there's this many jobs that you didn't think would exist. An astronaut experience coordinator. I mean, things that I couldn't have dreamed of as a little girl who fell in love with space. The more expanse there is in the industry, the more jobs that become available, but not just in quantity, in variety, right? A spaceport. I would never have thought, be a spaceport director, right? Like, that's not something that existed in the past. So as space evolves, as it becomes more accessible, it brings space into more communities, offers more jobs with good pay, with good benefits, grows the backbone of STEM in this nation, which we need. So it's really exciting to me. And that moment in Florida when I'm like, holy cow, this is the fifth launch. It's mind-boggling, and I know it's happening, yet I'm like, oh, wow. There you go.
It's hard to top Michelle's answer, so let me just add this, and I base this on what I said before about describing the way the Earth looks. Personally, I'm a proponent for commercial spaceflight, as long as it is done safely. You'll hear a little bit more about my spaceflight experience and why safety is so critically important to me. But I want each and every one of you to have the same experience I've had. I want you to have the opportunity to look back on your home planet the way I've seen it. Because again, to me, it can be a profoundly life-changing experience.
I'll riff off of Captain Lawrence's comments, and something that I've seen in our opening acts, and I mean, gosh, we flew 6 flights in 7 months leading up to the summer that I flew, and every one of those people, and we're breaking the mold, right? They don't need to be people who have had career paths like ours any longer to go. Every one of them has had something profound to say about their experience, but they use different words, they focus on different things, and I think to me that just highlights the underlying differences in them as humans and their lived experience, and that ability to not just connect with, I'm going to call you guys space nerds, but I mean,
we're
space nerds like us, right? Like, you don't need to be a space nerd like one of us to get something useful, valuable, and gain some insight from this experience, and having been at the coalface in this evolution, in how humans access space safely and repeatedly has really taught me that straight.
When I first started at NASA, we didn't have the commercial spaceflight industry. So I would have students ask me about internships. And here you go, here's the NASA website, go apply. And now, I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. You can apply at Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin or VAST or Astrobotics or Firefly or here, and then the kids are like, oh my gosh, that's too much. But the reality is that it is exploding out there. There are so many different companies that you can choose from. And they're all going to need places to launch from. I guess the line is pretty long, Florida right now. So we need spaceports like this to be able to keep up with the growth in that community.
We have the ISS, International Space Station. It's been up almost 25 years. It took the shuttle to build it, and it was a great program that got it built. And if you think about, if you go back into the 80s and the 90s, it was kind of a slow, steady cadence of increasing of the size of the space station and things going on in space. And then this guy named Elon Musk came along and said he wanted to do something, and he did something that nobody had ever done before, which was he landed a booster. He landed a booster. How many people remember that or saw that? about 10 years ago. Wow, we got space nerds here. We're good. So now SpaceX is moving on to some other projects. Blue Origin is about to fly again. They're going to land a booster. And if you look really in the last 10 years how quickly things moved, it's I think surprising to everybody. I don't think anybody thought space technology was going to progress that fast. So now let's look ahead in the next 25 years. Anybody want to try and guess what's going to happen? Virgin Galactic's going to be flying 2 or 3 times a week. There's 4 private space stations being built right now. Private space stations. We're figuring out how to go back to the moon. Elon Musk still wants to go to Mars. So the next 25 years, I don't even know how to imagine. But how about each of you talk about what that means for some of the people out here, maybe their kids or grandkids?
I'll start. Let's just think about when I was 10 years old, we were doing follow-up equipment on the moon for the first time. I would like to think that in 25 years, Andy Weir's book, that if you want to go do a vacation on the moon, that would be an opportunity for you. Before I go up to a space hotel. Because let me tell you, weightlessness is incredible. It is just so much fun to not have to deal with gravity. But commercial airline flight right now, we don't think twice about it. It's routine. Hey, I'm going to go do a vacation in the Bahamas, so I just book a flight and off I go. I would like to think that we have a handful of destinations in low Earth orbit or beyond where, hey, I feel like spending a long weekend on the moon, that you have an opportunity to go book a flight with a commercial company that allows you to do something like that. Truly, it's not something reserved just for a handful of us, but it really becomes routine, like when we done the commercial airplane flights.
It's hard to predict, because Janjua, I don't know if for you feel this way, but when I started at NASA in 2000, I would never have dreamed that I wouldn't have dreamed that this place would have existed, right? So it's really hard for me to think what it'll look like 25 years from now. But my hope is that as we continue to expand access, we give opportunities to individuals who otherwise wouldn't have access for whatever reason, including countries who don't have access to space flight. We in America have had the privilege of seeing the power of the inspiration of space, especially with Neil Armstrong and landing on the moon. That spawned a STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math frenzy, if you will. We didn't use the term STEM at the time, but that caused so many more people to want to study those subjects. You can't be what you can't see. Sally Ride said that, and I think there's a lot of power in that. So my hope is 25 years from now, every country will have had not just one, but many people who have had the opportunity to go to space to show people it really is there for everybody.
Just going really quickly on a thread that Michelle brought up. When I flew, one of my crewmates, Tuba, had to sever. He's Turkish. And he's a Turkish physicist, studied at UC Davis, and we were getting together the week prior, we were spending a lot of time together, we were fly together. And I just asked him, I said, hey man, what is it with you? And he said, it was really fascinating because I didn't even think about it, but it's exactly what you said. He said, I will be the second person from my country ever to go to space. And the first one had just flown with Axiom, the some of Wendy's former colleagues. And Tuba was a backup for that mission, and he then was going to fly with us. And he looks at me and he said, my country has the largest growing population in Europe. We have the youngest demographic in Europe. He said, I speak to people who up to now thought space is a uniquely American thing. And when our friends and neighbors and allies realize that our innovation and our underwriting in terms of your efforts and our efforts will expose them to these things. He said, Jameel, I speak to them in their own language, and I'm somebody I grew up where they grew up, and I tell them the benefits and the virtues that can come from the investments that places like America make, that's like, it really kind of stopped me at dinner. I was like, wow, I didn't think about it. And he really eloquently put into very personal words something that Michelle just brought up. So that's what it looks like in the future.
And I'd like to play on a little bit what Wendy said earlier about our relationship with Russia. So 20 years ago when we embarked on the construction of the International Space Station, it was 15 countries really that got together to construct this space station. And when you look at the marvel that is the International Space Station and everything that had to happen right to make that happen, and the collaboration between the countries that had to happen. When we lost Columbia and didn't have a way to get into the space station, our Russian counterparts stepped up and helped us. So that type of collaboration, fast forward 25 years, particularly given what is going on in the world today, what if we expanded that group to 15 to 30 to 40? Missions to the Moon and Mars are going to be far more complex than the Earth orbit. It's going to require a lot more collaboration. So why don't we treat the planet the way Wendy sees the planet, as one big orbiting wall, instead of these lines on a map that divide us. So 25 years from now, I want to see 40 countries, 50 countries partnering on going to space.
I think we're going to close out this panel. We have the Lieutenant Governor here, but I'll do one more question. Oh man, why don't we go ahead and take questions? That might be easier. So go ahead.
Can I invite you to my school? Not here, look.
Where's your school? We'd like to invite them to our Go for Launch program.
Okay, sure.
Virgin Galactic has been very good at STEM and workforce development. They're happy to set something up, and I'm happy to, or other colleagues from Spaceport America, we're always happy to come to your school, any of the local schools that we can come to. So,
Somebody out there I can talk to?
what's that?
Is there somebody out there I can talk to?
Yeah, where's Charlie? Where's Charlie? That guy right there, Charlie. Charlie Hurley is our PIO. He also does a lot of the STEM. Yeah.
God bless you all.
Yeah. Question? Another question?
I worked in space shuttle medical operations from 1989 to 93, and we were very involved with space countermeasures to counteract the effects of microgravity, such as the loss of blood and osteoporosis. And one of the big things that we were researching at that time was the lower body negative pressure unit. And I'm curious what the state-of-the-art countermeasures are for situations like the space station or foregoing space stations.
Great question. Thank you for working in the shuttle program from 89 to 93. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
He wondered where we're at with countering some of the negative effects of having humans in space and the level of gravity that's different than what we have down here on planet Earth. Lower body negative pressure, I did that. The Russians call it the Chiba suit. It's just not comfortable. What it does is literally, when you go to space, because gravity's not acting on you, all the fluid that's normally trapped in your legs moves into your chest, and you swear it all is upside your head. You feel like you have a permanent head cold. That shift of fluid causes some problems. So they're trying to figure out ways to counter that. One is the lower body negative pressure, literally trying to suck the fluid back down into your legs. Now they're trying to an experiment with bike cuffs that have the astronauts basically put a device that they can inflate and wear them around their thighs in hopes of moving some of that fluid. Not recently, it's been over 10 years now, the doctors have realized that fluid shift is also causing vision problems in the crew members, because the extra fluid inside the skull is literally squeezing the eyeball and changing its shape and shifting that focal point. Fortunately for the vast majority of crew members, those changes are not permanent. So we're not much farther along on countermeasures. Short of artificial gravity, there's just some things that crew members experience that we can't really effectively counter. Good progress, though, in terms of bone loss and muscle loss. As soon as the human body goes into space and grab at your skeleton senses, it doesn't need to be as strong anymore. It no longer has to hold you upright against gravity. So you immediately begin to lose calcium from your bone. And if you don't counter that, you will develop osteoporosis, just like people do down here on Earth. So currently the best way to counteract that is to have the crew members exercise. They run on a treadmill. They do resistant exercise as well. However, how many of you really want to work out 2 hours a day? Okay, Peggy Woodson does. I might, I like to work out. Yeah, you could, yeah. So 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, but that's effective. So we're making progress, but honestly, there's still a lot more work to do in that field.
All right. Maybe we got a question, go ahead.
What about space junk? Are we gonna keep space cleaner than we are on our planet?
Space junk, everybody know what space junk is?
Is it a myth or is it real?
There's a lot of,
It's real. So there were times where, most of the time, because we have people tracking every little teeny particle that's out there, we will get notification on the space station in enough time to actually physically move the space station out of the way. Sometimes we get late notice and you have to tell the crew members, go inside your spacecraft and shut that hatch. I'll tell you when it's safe to come out. So that it is absolutely real, and it gets worse when countries maybe blow up another person's satellite, and then that debris comes down, or other companies need to launch something. You have to have a regulatory agency saying you can launch here, but don't get in this orbit, because if your stuff decays or gets hit by something, it could blow up, it could rain on down the space station and cause some problems. So it is a real problem. There are different companies out there trying to solve that problem. I saw an experiment by a Japanese company that basically is a vacuum cleaner. And just trying to go around collecting it, which may or may not be the most efficient thing to do. The most efficient thing to do would be to regulate it and make sure we minimize the amount of new debris that gets added to the system.
all right, thank you. All right, one more question, this better be short. What's that? Wrap it up, all right. We're good, one more question.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm with the Stamars Lab. I was in opportunity Wendy. You flew on Atlantis, Endeavor, and Discovery. Twice Discovery. What was your favorite spaceship? And why?
Wyatt wants to know which one was my favorite and why, or it's like which is your favorite mission. My response to that is all of them. You spend most of your time training. You wish it were the reverse, that more time in space and less time on the ground, but unfortunately it's a lot of time on the ground, some time in space. So any opportunity you have to ride the rocket, it's awesome. It never has a fond spot in my heart because she was my first orbiter, but then Atlantis was awesome and Discovery was a true workhorse.
Hey Wyatt, we have a go-to-launch program in Albuquerque next month. Go visit the higher orbits group and find out. We just went with an astronaut for 2 days.
In fact, we'll take you over there.
All right, I think we got to wrap it up. I know some of you have some questions. Next, we're going to have the Lieutenant Governor. We'll take just a couple-minute break, but I think these folks might hang around a little bit.
Actually, what I'm going to say is Wendy will be back on stage in about 20 minutes.
Okay.
She's got to take a break for right now, so we're going to steal her away. I'll be speaking after Wendy, but Wendy will be doing photographs in the higher orbits group at 1 o'clock.
All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap it, but if you have a question, just come up to the stage, all right?